Today we'll be discussing needs for the religious education program. And just to put this in context, this is part of a series of town hall events that the Board of Trustees asks these various programs to put on to help guide what is now known as the Campus Development and Prioritization Committee, or CDPC. The CDPC is helping to put together a narrative that will help guide an architect or team of architects or designers to give the church what we think we need or what we need to serve our community for years to come. RE is also a social function. It's part of our social action, because every child or young adult that goes through our program may leave with a little more generous spirit, a little more ability to understand their own motivations and examine them, and learn from thinkers from past and present. So with that bit of context, I'll turn it over to Carrie Wendell.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Carrie Wendell, and I am the chairman of the Religious Education Council, so that's how it is that I'm standing here before you today. And myself, along with Julia Wendell and Graham Ross, have come before you here today so that we can present to you what we think are the capital campaign needs for religious education. And we'll be going through some slides here to kind of go through that. So aside from some cosmetic improvements, few updates have been made to the colored door classroom spaces since they were built 55 years ago. So this leads to that question, and right now you can check yourself, are you older than the flooring in the RE classrooms? And for some of you, the answer may be yes. So we feel that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So we have put together in our presentation some of the things you might not be paying particular attention to. These are some of the things that those new families entering see when they come to our church about what our spaces are all about. These are in the classrooms that the children are in. This panel is covering some repair work that is unfinished behind it, but in addition you have the very old tile on the floor with the grout that's super dirty as well. Here we have broken and chipped tile that also has dirt and stains on it. And here we have drinking fountains that don't work anymore, that have not been removed from the walls. I know at least one of them is leaking and has caused damage behind the wall to the actual wall itself. And so even though we've turned off the water, but we still have that damage. And of course, this is not very appealing for our families or our youth or children who are there. Here's some more stained and cracked flooring. And this is actually in a space that we use with rentals. So these are the kind of things that we're advertising to people. If you come and rent our space, this is the loveliness that we give you. All right, so what are the things that we're looking for in a capital campaign? We've put together this list of 6 points of what we would like to see. And really these address the comfort and ambience of our church, as well as just the functionality. And a big point we want to hit home for you today is that we don't feel this will just benefit the children and youth of our church, but the adults as well, and the renting community that we also work with. So Julia is going to go ahead and cover our first point, which is to develop a multi-purpose space for the congregants and for rentals.
So one of the main things we want to do with this capital campaign is create a dedicated BUC space that will be used as a high school classroom on Sunday mornings and Sunday nights, but can be a space for other people in the church to come and gather and build community throughout the week. It'll just be an open space that will be not for renters, that we can really personalize and make into like a BUC home. And a second space that could be used as a multi-function space for both rentals and BUC functions that really could be used for lots of different things. And yeah.
Like when you sleep over and we need for a large space for youth that need to sleep for cons.
Yeah, like youth sleeping or just any other church functions that could happen. This is an example of really good youth space at Cross of Christ Lutheran Church. It's also shared by the adult programs when the youth programs aren't using it. As you can see, they can fit 5 good couches in there with space around the couches. It also has a lot of like natural light coming in and just is a really inviting and welcoming space. This is a different view of that same space, and you can see they have like a pool table for a fun thing to socialize, and this whole space, actually, if you look like across that ledge, it's a loft above like a gym type area that has like a basketball hoop, and that would be good for socialization as well. This is another view of that space where you can really see the technology they've implemented in the back with the TVs and computers that can help with learning and just fun. This is Woodside Church, and it's an example of a good youth space because you can see how the youth have really decorated and personalized this space to be their own. This is, I think, Kensington Church. It's a socialization space that has couches, a checkers table, and a cafe-type seating that could work as a social environment, multi-purpose space. This is a youth classroom with some alternative seating. And then this is a youth space that has food accoutrements, I guess, that has like a mini fridge and a sink, and that would allow food preparation to happen in the space as well. And then this is a large multi-purpose space that could be used for lots of different things and a variety of purposes. And another thing we would like to add is improved technology, because right now our church does have Wi-Fi, but it doesn't reach all parts of the church. Like in Red Door or Blue Door or Green Door where classrooms happen, there isn't Wi-Fi access. So we'd like to enhance our ability to conduct meetings and classes remotely and allow BUCers improved access to Wi-Fi and other electronic resources while on site. Also, for religious education, a lot of the teachers have come up with curriculum ideas that involve looking at videos online or other online activities, but they can't do these because the classrooms simply don't have the capabilities. This is an example of good technology at Cross of Christ Lutheran Church, how they have those TVs that could be used for learning or just events and fun.
So I almost can feel it in the room, that you might be looking at some of these spaces and like saying, well, we have that. I mean, that kind of reminds me of the Commons, or, you know, we have food there, or we have a large space there. And through part of our presentation today, we're going to help explain to you why that's really not going to work. Because if we were to take a space like that, we would find limitations in other areas where we need more space. In addition, I just want to add to Julia's comment about technology, that also goes back to rental income. So again, the church makes a lot off of rental income, and being able to have those technological capabilities helps make the space we're renting a better space for that as well. So our second point is that although we have already made great social worship and meeting spaces for adults, we need to kind of do that for our youth and our children. Again, let's take a look at what we already have for adults. So we have this beautiful worship space that we're in right now. We have meditative and gorgeous views for us to look at. And we have a space that really works for us to gather together and socialize. But I don't know about you, but I have sometimes been a little bit agitated, because sometimes there are children who, like, the adults are hanging out in here, and then what are they supposed to do? Like, they go and they might be running around. And I know for some of our older congregants, you know, there's a serious fear factor there. You know, you could knock me over and you're running through the church. And, you know, there are times even where I've stopped them and been like, hey, excuse me, could you please not run through the church? There's also been times where I've heard other people say to them, hey, we don't run in here, which is not very, you know, spiritual in the way that we communicate to the children. But when we reflect upon, if it's cold outside, where exactly do these children have to go? Where are they supposed to go to be the young, exuberant children that they are? I mean, for some age groups, a juice table is going to work for you. Yeah, but for other ones, it's not. And we'll get to that when we get to our last point, but the point is we need to create socialization spaces for them. So let's have something centrally located, comfortable, where not only they can socialize, but maybe other people can socialize. You know, I've heard from other areas of our congregation the need to maybe say, hey, friend who lives in the area, let's meet at church and gather together and have a talk. Or that might be a greeting, a meeting area for other people that aren't youth or children, and we can do that. So when we look at what other churches are out there and what they're providing, here we have a beautiful loungy kind of area by lots of windows. Here we have cafe tables and a nice large lobby area. Something more thoughtful, a nice library with, you know, good, comfortable chairs to relax in. Or outside wonderful gathering places to come together. Here's, back in Kensington, they actually have, you can see this is actually a cafe. So there are cafe counters, cafe tables, and other gathering couches. And I want to stop and make the point with you right now that we're not exactly, you can see we're not pinning down for you, this is what we exactly want. We really believe that needs to be a conversation amongst the entire congregation. What we are saying is, here's the list of the needs that we see, and then we're trying to show you what else is out there for other people who are choosing churches. And this is what they're seeing. And then you compare that with some of the pictures of what we showed you before of what we're providing. In addition to that they're choosing, much of our original design of our church was sort of this let's all sit in a circle and talk to each other kind of thing. And that's not the way people interact so much anymore. So again, when you're looking at those different arrangements of couches and chairs, or even if in the social hall, right, we have tall tables and we have low tables, and we have the black, like bay, where the bay windows are, that black ledge, you can sit down over there. So there's lots of different choices for adults for where they can go and do that. We have done some surveys, and we found that the people in our RE program, the families, have said that one thing that we do very well is we avoid clicks. We a long time ago had some feedback that we weren't very good at that, and we worked at that and got rid of clicks. But now part of our feedback is that we are not a place that nurtures friendships. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of a commuter campus here. People like myself travel from Romeo. Now, I don't know if you know much about Romeo, so let me put it to you simply. George Bush came to speak there. So if I have some children who would like to interact socially with other people who are of similar mind, where is this place that they can come and hang out and be together, that they can feel to be part of a community? Because we're down here in Bloomfield Hills, and we have other friends that are up in Dryden, or we have people over in Farmington area, and this is the place that centralizes them. And how are we showing that this is a place where they can gather and feel connected with other people in the world, in this little part of the world? And when they compare that with their friends' churches have these other things that we're showing. So some of our older children choose to move kind of away from our church, or we have people, new families, who might consider our church but choose another church because those spaces are available to them. So here's a picture of another space that might be a possibility, having these kind of gaming centers. I know even in Romeo at the basement of the Methodist Church, they have a huge room that's just all full of gaming tables and things like that for the kids to be able to hang out in. Here's Kensington Church, and you can see that here we have a more of an adult socializing space, but in the far back you can see that there's actually a orange curly slide coming from the upstairs, and then some of their poles have like colorful blocks with places to sit around on the bottom of there, which we'll see closer in another slide later. Here again, what are we seeing? We're seeing lots of light, we're seeing kind of modern architecture, we're seeing lovely couches, warm tones, beautiful flooring. This is what other churches are able to provide for their congregants. Here's another space where we're seeing the flooring changes between carpet and wood or laminate flooring, and different colors are being brought in. Here's a more home-like setting in the lobby area with, again, a variety of different seating. Now, it's not to say we don't have some of this, right? We have our lovely 2 gray couches up there, but some of you in this room have shared with me those 2 gray couches, and like by ourselves, we can take over a whole couch practically when we're waiting for our children to get done with what they're doing. So it doesn't become sufficient for the entire population of parents that are maybe hanging around waiting too for their kids. Other UU churches are recognizing this and responding to their needs, and one example we have for you is in Naperville, Illinois. They have a 19th century schoolhouse that's been repurposed, and they added on this addition. You can see there's a lot of light, cool angles coming in, and on the inside it becomes a shared space for their congregants too. So you can see how this would be useful for children and youth, but also adults can hang out here and have a lovely time. And that's the goal we're really looking for. So now a more immediate goal is we have this great new preschool that's starting in our basement, and that has taken over our large classroom that's down there, and that's made it difficult for us to be like, okay, we can't touch all these things, or they have to put things away and we have to haul things down to that room because it's not really our space anymore. And in the end, we actually need 6 classrooms every Sunday to run our program that are upstairs. We also need our pre-K and our nursery classrooms, which we still have down in the basement, so we really need a total of 8. So those 2 are down there, but then let's count them. Up here we have green door, so we have 2 classrooms in green door. We have red door, so that's 3. And then in blue door, we actually only have 1 of those 2 classrooms. The other classroom is used by AA, which is not only a very, very good renter for us, but part of the ministry of our church to be committed to AA. So they have that other blue door, so we're at 4. And then we have the commons, which is 5. So here's where I go back to, if like me, you might have at first been thinking, well, couldn't the commons be converted to a kind of gathering space? Remember that we would then we would lose it as a classroom if it became this other dedicated space. So we would still be at 5. Now, even if we pulled in the other blue door, well, then there might be complications with some of our renters for pulling in blue door, because that's the space that they needed dedicated to them. So you can see these, again, we're not presenting exact solutions, we're just showing that this is a need we have. So also there are other committees who are proposing other uses for other rooms, so we just want to put out on the table, we need 6 classrooms upstairs. Whatever you guys decide to do with buildings, please remember we need 6 classrooms upstairs. Okay. Here are some examples of the classrooms and the warmth of it. I'm not here to advocate for this particular decorating style of these churches, but again, when you look at our church environment, it actually is very cold feeling in there. We did replace some windows, but there's still some issues with just the feeling of comfort and warmth. Some of them we have redecorated, but there still is the kind of completeness, wholeness, that there's not dilapidated things within the classroom. Another thing we need is really increased storage space. So if we go back to that discussion of the classrooms, upstairs we have in green door 1 closet in there that's really bursting at the seams. We have red door has a closet, and then each of the blue door classrooms has a closet, but we don't have the one that AA rents because they've taken that over. So we have very small, limited storage space. Here's the kind of space and storage that we're seeing in other schools. Sorry. Churches. And then this is, in Kensington, they have a large garage door that is attached to the church, and when you open that garage door, they get this space, and that's a window in the back, which there can be lots of room for other things that could be pulled in, basketball hoops or whatever, or if there were to be gaming tables or things like that, if there was a part where we would want them put away for something, this is a different storage solution. Finally, we go back to that issue of creating a co-space where we can socialize. Again, yes, if we looked at the commons or we looked at building something, I can't be in the social hall socializing with my friends, and then if I have some 4th grader, that my 4th grader is way on the other end of the church. That doesn't help me to stick around and be with my friends. I might be very concerned about what's going on. Now, we're not saying it has to be attached to the social hall. We're just saying this is a conflict we hear about a lot. The ability for younger congregants to stay and socialize with their friends and help grow and foster those friendships while still having their young children having something to do. So again, here would be that lobby with the Kensington Church where there's other things right nearby, or I refer you back to this type of a space where there can be some socialization opportunities. And finally, we're going to have Graham come and talk about our last thought, which is the purchase of a church van, which we really feel will benefit, again, all congregants.
Yeah, so the church van will both benefit youth and adult activities that are growingly outside of BUC, like SOS, where we would need to transport supplies or people, and choir events that the choir really wants to be able to transport people outside of BUC, and alliance activities and social action projects like Gleaners, or the youth go to, along with some adults, to Greening of Detroit, and it's a lot easier to transport people along with supplies to outside activities. And again, with youth conferences, where youth will go out to places maybe 3 hours away, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 hours away, and stay for a weekend. And we have a picture, if you want to switch slides, of youth going to a conference in a small compact where they not only have like a person for every single seat, but they also have to carry their stuff for the entire weekend. And again, there are adult conferences as well where it'll be like this for social action and otherwise. And they, with regionalization, where we're moving from a district of 4 states to a district from Michigan to Kentucky to Kansas to North Dakota, they could have conferences all over the place, and we won't have the pain of supporting adults of the youth in their, they don't want all these miles on their car and stuff like that. Plus, we can have a more comfortable travel for the youth and the adults. So.
Like just this past con, it was a very important con. It was a working con. It was chaplaincy, where youth got trained to be chaplains. And actually, we could only get 1 driver to this con. And so 2 people who really wanted to go couldn't be able to go because we simply didn't have enough space. And that would be changed if we had a church van. And yeah, and it would really help all parts of the church, social action, adult conferences and stuff, and also definitely the youth program. Because like adults also have cars, but youth, like we can't drive ourselves. Or there might even be legal restrictions on like when you're 16, you still have a license, but you can only drive 1 person. Or maybe some adults don't want their kids riding in a car with a youth driver. So, yeah, a van would really help us.
All right, so those are our 6 points that we wanted to go over, and now we just wanted to open it up to any questions you might have. Yes.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to say in support of the van idea that if you have lettering on the van that denotes that it's Birmingham Unitarian Church, then it's also advertising for the church that we are out and about in the community and doing things, and when people see it, it's another way to advertise for us. And I also think traveling, if you're going to take 5 cars and go somewhere for an Alliance field trip, traveling all together builds more of a sense of a shared community and a shared experience, whether it's a con or adults that are going anywhere too.
I agree, and also it's more environmentally sound. But and I appreciate that point, because we made that point in our first talk. That I know I went to an event with Moses, and we went down into Detroit, but we had to rent a bus for us to go. And when we got down there, a whole bunch of other churches had their own church bus. So it was like, oh, that church and that church and that church, and we were just, you know, a rented bus. Did you have something you'd like to add?
Oh, no, it was about the environment.
The environment, I know. We all thought you were going to go there, I think. Yes. Any other comments or questions?
I do have a question. Were you thinking of putting the youth in some specific area in the social hall?
No, but our youth have actually said we wish that we had more connections, between cross-generational connections, and right now our space doesn't facilitate that as much. And I think we're really not thinking as much about the youth as those sort of in-betweeners. Again, you have the people, you have the very young who will sit at that juice table or kind of hang out with each other, and they're having a great time. And then you have the youth. Again, the youth is still a problem, right? Because when they get done, a lot of times they'd like to go to Red Door, but even Red Door gets rented. So there are sometimes at the end of church where there's renters coming immediately in, and they don't have somewhere to go and hang out. So they end up in places like the bride's room, which is not really built for a whole bunch of youth to hang out in there. I mean, we don't really want them up on the edge of those couches, like pushing on that or whatever. We want that space to be preserved for that. So we have them hanging out, and then you have all those people in between, right? So you have people who are like, what, 7 to when they're maybe in 6th grade. All those kids, what are they doing? The juice table does not satisfy me, and I can't go hang out with the high schoolers, so what am I doing? That's really, and we don't, again, we're saying, hey, is it that we can change some aspect? Is there a part nearby where we can modify something? Is it a thing in the basement? What is it? But here's something we hear time and time again, where young parents are saying they have this concern about what their kids are doing.
Okay, you're not talking about doing an addition onto the church, a physical outside
There
addition.
may be, for some of those earlier spaces, like we would like an added space, or if we do have conversion of a space, then we have the classroom issue. So in the end, there might be an additional space, but I don't know that it's for that social hall problem, that is the solution is an addition. But certainly for some of the other things, a gathering space or a large multi-purpose room space, I think we are talking about adding on, whether it's adding on to Red Door, whether it's maybe going between the commons and the offices, we don't really know. That's something we want. We don't want that to come from us, because to be honest with you, I know that if I saw someone and they said, well, I want an addition off the social hall down into here, I would immediately go, well, I don't want that, so I don't support that. Well, we're trying to avoid that. We don't want to pin down something and have you go, well, I don't want that because I don't want it to look like that, because we didn't say it had to look like that. We're just telling you these are things that we really need some additional funds to solve this problem, to make our church a place where more and more congregants will gather, because in the end, more congregants is better for everybody's, whatever is your passion. It's better for Alliance, it's better for greening of Detroit, for the Green Sanctuary Committee, it's better for fellowship, it's better for worship, that we, not that we explode at the seams, but that we just feel like we are full.
Okay.
Could you pass your microphone that way?
My name is Allie Smith. You probably all know me. I graduated last year, and I just have a comment on the van situation. One of the highlights of the youth programs here was being able to travel like hours or minutes, because we went to Detroit once, to go to cons. And you meet some of the coolest people that I would have never been able to meet had I not been able to go. And one of the biggest struggles with cons is we can never find drivers. So this van would be a crazy, huge opportunity, because it would just require one driver, because it's going to fit enough. It should fit enough youth. It's going to fit enough youth? Yeah, we'll be good. So, but yeah, the van would help these youth so much, because, especially because Graham Ross, he's on disc. He's going to have to go to lots of cons all the time. And Yes, please buy this
DISC
van.
is the district council.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So.
Thank you, Allie, and I would just like to add to that being a non-creedal church, we're about action, right? How do we know that we're raising our children and youth to grow up to be people who take action on what they believe? I sit and I go to the courtyard and I look at that plaque of Bob Marshall and I say, this is the legacy of this church, to take action for the things you're passionate about. Having a van, having space where social justice can be planned, where we can bring others into this church to see our passion for those kind of things. That's how we back up what we really believe, with the space and the time and the commitment to our RE program that also benefits our entire congregation to be people of action. And that's really what we're looking for. We also, when you look at the storage space, how can you provide hands-on lessons? I mean, we're really the envy of the UUA for the curriculum that we've developed for our children and our youth. But to have the hands-on experience means you need stuff. Where's the stuff going to be stored? Otherwise, you become pencil and paper and lecture environment, and we're supposed to be people of action. And we know from educational theory that they will learn it more if they can do it.
One further comment about the van. Years ago when my kids were attending this church, a lot of years ago, I had a van. They hit every conference. I never drove, but I had friends who drove, and the kids were, excuse me, in that van, and it was wonderful. They don't, because they're too far flung now.
How big a van are you talking about?
Well, I mean, we have some events where we have only 3 or 4 people going, and we have other events where we might have a dozen. But again, it's really also talking about not just for us, but for instance, we're trying to develop a greater connection with the Flint congregation, where there's both adults who might go up there to do really ministry, to be involved up there, to help bring resources up there. And so how many adults would want to go on that trip? Well, we'd want this vehicle to be equipped for that, as well as for youth. But we at times have about a dozen youth that go to things.
Hi, I've just gotten back into being a youth group advisor again, and we had a conference here that we hosted, and a group of people came from Peoria, Illinois, and I think there was like 12 or 13 kids that came, and they all came in one van. And they had a policy at their church where they have to have 2 adults in each vehicle, which is, I think, typical of Boy Scouts and a few others. And they could accommodate everybody that wanted to come from their church, and it was a church van. And I think they make 15-passenger vans still. Used to have 18-passenger ones, I think, but I'm not sure if they still manufacture those.
Yeah, so we're not saying that, you can hand that over, we're not saying that we have to have a bus. We're just saying, let's look into something. I mean, if we start somewhere, we can grow from there if we find the need is there. We could have 2 vans eventually, but right now we're just looking for one larger vehicle dedicated for BUC to do this kind of traveling outreach work.
I just want to point out that while you're coming from the RE perspective, what you're talking about is much bigger than that. It's really about bringing the church up to a place where it's on par with these newer facilities where they're creating coffee house spaces and places where people want to hang out, whether it's adults or kids. So that, I mean, I know it's coming from the kind of youth and kid perspective, but it's really about a much bigger idea of what the church is and why it's here and why people are wanting to be here. So
yes, it is, and I appreciate you adding that in to bring that point home, because we really feel that what we're asking for is going to be for the benefit, sometimes directly for the benefit of other congregants, and sometimes indirectly by the additional people that it would bring in that would help benefit all the things that you might be passionate about. Yes. I think Eric has a microphone for you.
Thank you. Well, this is a very small addenda, but I think it would be very helpful to make a banner that you could put on a bus that you rent so that you could advertise. And we could rent a whole lot of buses for the cost of buying a van that may be too small?
I just took the youth to the chaplaincy conference, and when we were there, the Ann Arbor Church was there. They had taken 2 vans. One of the vans had been donated to them by somebody in their congregation, and they had magnets that they, with their congregation's name, that they put on the side of the vehicle, whether it was the vehicle that the congregation owned or the vehicle, being used by the other people driving. But I mean, for a start, that's a real simple, inexpensive way to go. I'm sure it was less than $100 to do that. And I agree with everything you've been saying. I mean, particularly with respect to the space, that's been an ongoing problem for me and my children, particularly with Emma. She didn't come to church today because something was going on afterwards, and there's no place for her to go. I mean, after service, I don't know where she is because she just kind of has to find some place, and I never know where that is. It's not very comfortable for me. It's not comfortable for her. It hasn't been easy for her to get to know the other children and to develop friendships that way. It's been a real difficult experience for her this way. And if I hadn't really wanted to come to this church and had a strong commitment to it, we wouldn't be here because of that. And I'm sure that a lot of people are facing that.
Well, and again, thank you for that. And I just want to bring up that, again, as Dan pointed out, it's not, we are shifting into the RE also being responsible to help with adult RE. And we envision these spaces and this socialization to be places for adults to hang out and interact. Sylvia Whitmer mentioned to me, there's times where she just wants to call her friend and go, hey, can we just meet at church and talk about this thing that we need to talk about? And would there be a space that's not being rented at the time that you could hang out and do that, and making it that kind of central community location? So we do want that kind of build those friendships throughout the lifespan of RE.
All right, one last comment.
I think it's really wise that when people say, well, where do you want to have it, that you say right away, we're not architects. This is what we need and want, and we hope you're going to figure it out.
Thank you.
Actually, that's the point of these conversations, and this is really something we should all be discussing at social hour in small groups, and make sure your input is known. We're trying to get information out about the Community Development, or Campus Development and Prioritization Committee, or CDPC, but keep us informed of what your thoughts are, and with that, shall we wrap it up?
We are wrapped up.
All right. Thank you very much for attending.